everybody. I need to ask you a question, and I want to see a raise of hands. How many caregivers out there have ever gotten frustrated taking care of their parents, not understanding where they're coming from and what's going on? Okay, I see most of you have your hands raised. I would raise both of mine over the years that I was dealing with my parents. My dad had brain cancer, my mom had Alzheimer's. And so I want to share with you a story about perspectives and what a difference it has between the person you're caring for and your perspective yourself. This story I call the Red Sled. Now, my parents were living at the time up at the lake, and they live at the end of a peninsula surrounded by water. And it's a beautiful place. It's a year-round home, and it's absolutely gorgeous all year long. And one summer, it was August 1st, my dad's birthday, we had a birthday party at my house, and we're all out in the backyard having a wonderful time. And I see my mom kind of rubbing her knee. And I said, "Mom, what's with the knee?" And she's like, "Oh, you know, I hurt it this winter when I fell." I said, "You fell? I talked to you 3-4 times a day. I never heard anything about a fall. How'd you fall?" And she said, "Oh, Lori, I have Alzheimer's." She said, "I don't remember. Ask Dad." So I looked at my dad, and my brothers were looking at my dad too, saying, "Yeah, what happened?" And my dad said, "Oh, well, you know, it was this winter, and we were going to go to the store. And I have to explain that their cabin, or year-round home, is separate from their garage, so they had to walk outside. And as my dad explained, they're walking towards the garage, and my mom slips on this big sheet of ice. And he couldn't get her up, and she couldn't get up on her own. Now, living at this end of this peninsula, everybody goes south, but my folks could no longer travel south, so all their neighbors were gone. So my dad knew there was nobody in the neighborhood that he could call to help get Mom up. He knew that he couldn't go into the house to call because my mom would have a panic attack because she doesn't have any sense of time, and she'd be scared sitting out in the freezing cold on this ice by herself. So he wasn't quite sure what to do, so he said, "Well, I'm going to go into the garage where he could still talk to Mom and she could hear his voice and see if he could figure a way to get her up off the ice." Because with my mom, you see, if you ask her to bend her knee to maybe help position her to get up, and I've actually done this when this has happened, my mom will go, "Okay," and she'll bend her finger. And she thinks she's totally in compliance with what I asked for. And so my dad knew that wasn't going to work. So he goes into the garage, he's talking with my mom, and the only thing he can find is some sand and some salt. So he comes back out by my mom, and he's sprinkling the salt around her like she's a tire and going to get traction. Needless to say, that didn't work. Dad wasn't quite sure what to do, so we went back into the garage again and looked some more, thinking there's got to be a way to get my mom up, because my dad was in a weakened condition with his cancer, and my mom was a heavy woman. There was no way he could pull her up off that ice. So my dad goes back into the garage, and he's scrounging around, and he finds a red sled. And he pulls the plastic red sled up by my mom, and he rolls my mom onto the red sled. And from there, he was able to pull my mom up back towards the cabin, where there's a railing because there's a few steps to get in. And between the two of them and the railing, they were able to get my mom up. And my dad then explained, "Well, we decided to go in for some hot chocolate. It was a little chilly out there, and just stay home." Now, my brothers and I, from our perspective, are looking at this story going, if Dad could have fallen on that ice and gotten hurt, and we would have had 2 frozen parents. And who knows when we would have gotten a call. I would have known because I check in. But they could have froze to death sitting outside. And so my brothers and I just have this horrible vision of what could have been. My dad, on the other hand, is very proud of how he handled the situation. But I can tell you, before his illness, he never would have shared that story with us because he would have known what our reaction was. So as a family, we had to have a talk. And you guys know what I'm talking about. Those tough talks of, you know what, we don't think it's safe for you to live up at the lake anymore. Anyways, not during the winter months when nobody's around. We need you to come back to us in town. My dad was very adamant that wasn't going to happen because he didn't want to live with us. Not that they didn't enjoy our company, but he wanted his independence. And so we finally came to an agreement that they would come back for the winters, and they rented an apartment. And then in the summers, they could still go up there, but that it just wasn't safe. We have to understand and appreciate their perceptions, along with honoring our own. But we have to keep intact their independence and their dignity, and we have to do it with respect. As hard as it is sometimes, many of you are probably dealing with driving issues, or it could be cooking issues. You've got to ask the questions and figure out what's a reasonable response. What will keep them happy? What will keep them safe? Those are the two things you need to focus on. What will keep them happy? What will keep them safe? And always, always keeping in mind, doing it in a dignified manner that honors and respects them and allows them the independence we all cherish, no matter what age we are. Please keep that in mind when you're dealing with your loved ones.